Hey there, can you hear me and see me? Are we good? Sweet! Awesome. This is great. Okay. Hi, Timmy. All right, I'm gonna give it a couple more seconds, then we're gonna go live on Instagram and then we'll get this thing started. I'm excited. Sweet! Thanks, Albertina. That's awesome. That's great. All right. Hi, Instagram. Hi, Livestorm. Cool. All right. So, in case you don't know who I am, I want to do a quick little introduction. My name is Agostina Migoni, and I'm the Director of Operations at the TX Studio and also at our sister company Upstairs Waxspace, which is a co-working space for creatives and business leaders in the neighborhood of Oak Cliff. So I do that. And then aside from that, I'm also the executive director and co-founder of Das Blumelein Project, which is a collaborative arts nonprofit organization in Dallas. Sweet. Okay, so I want to take a quick couple minutes or not even minutes, seconds, and I want everybody that's tuning in right now to kind of say what their medium is. What do you guys do? What are you passionate about? What's your artistic medium? I'm interested to see what we're working with this morning. I know TX Studio, we've got a lot of photographers. What else do we have? Love it, Kelsey Kahn. Set styling, art direction. All right, sweet. Oh, hi, Sean. Design and photography, love it. Great, all right, guys, let's get started. Debunking grants for artists. So these are some of the common misconceptions that I have felt in the past, and also that I've heard others voice to me when starting the grant application process. And that is, do I need to hire a grant writer? That's usually a pretty frantic feeling that you can feel sometimes. And one and two kind of go hand in hand. So it's, I need to hire a grant writer because I'm not qualified to apply. The other one I get a lot is I don't have the time. And the other one is also grants are difficult to find. All right, and I am here to tell you that none of that is true, even though it can feel very true, and that's valid. However, I'm here to tell you why it's not. So no one is better qualified to advocate for your art, your vision, and your needs better than yourself. So a grant writer is not going to be able to explain the nuances of your project better than you can. However, that being said, that doesn't mean that you shouldn't have people double check your work before submitting your grant application. So that's something that I highly recommend. At least one person. I usually try to get around 3 people to take a look at my proposal before I submit it. And the reason why I do that and why my team at Das Blumelein Project does that is because you are pouring a lot of hours into this process and into this application, and a lot of emotions are running high because you're so passionate about this project that sometimes what you think you're writing is not what people are reading. And so the biggest thing with grants is that you want clarity. You want to make sure that your vision is being articulated as clearly as possible, that you're stating specifics. And so that really helps with when you have somebody able to kind of check your work and tune into that. All right. The other thing is, does it take time? Or I don't have the time. It's true. It does take time. However, I choose to change my perspective a little bit about it. So before you get overwhelmed about the time commitment, change your perspective. And what that looks like to me is I put the grant process as part of my larger creative process. So if you tuned into Temi and Afortina's webinar last Friday, they talked a lot about kind of mapping out their creative process. And so it kind of starts, and I agree, I do that as well. So it starts with kind of dreaming up about this vision. What do you want to create? What does that look like? You start really big and then you kind of hone it in. So once you've got a solid idea of what's happening and what you want to create, then you can kind of make an execution plan. All right, who is going to help me do this if it's not a solo project? What do I need? What's my budget? What supplies do I need, etc. Once you have those two things down and you realize, you know what, I'm going to need some more money than I had originally planned for this. So I'm going to opt for maybe applying for a grant and seeing what's out there. And so then you add that grant process, that grant application process into your creative process instead of just adding it as another to-do on your list. Okay, my to-do list is never ending, and putting right grant is not going to make it happen. So I have to include it as part of my creative process. It also allows me to continue to be excited about it. And also at the end of the day, all of the hours that you are putting into this grant application are hours that you're putting in to your final creative project. So know that it is definitely not time wasted. If anything, it's going to make your project better. So I challenge you to change your perspective a little bit when it comes to, I'm overwhelmed about this time commitment. Alrighty, and the last one is grants are everywhere, guys. Grants are everywhere. So I want to take just a few seconds again, and I want you guys to open a browser on your computer or on your phone, get Safari, Google Chrome, whatever you use, and type into Google any of these prompts, okay? Grants near me, grants for artists near me, grants for individual artists, grants for female artists, grants for photographers, grants for video production. Seriously, the list goes on and on. Whatever you want to put, type that into Google real quick. And I want you to send me a quick note here on the comment section, how many how many came up on your search criteria, just on page one. Hey, Chase Arrington, thanks. I'm glad that you're enjoying it. That's awesome. A lot. Yeah, Temmie, a lot of grants come up, guys. They are everywhere, okay? So the problem is not that there aren't enough grants or that you can't find them. The problem is, how do we get so specific that it works for me, right? Like, how do I know which grant is right for me? So let's move a little bit into the different types of grants. So there are two different types of grants, all right, guys? First one are public grants. And so Temmie, you put 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Yeah, 8 of those. And I believe maybe 1 or 2 of those are public. But okay, let's go into the definition. So public grants. Funding comes from a federal, state, or other publicly funded agency. That's the definition of a public grant. Some of the positive things about public grants is that usually, because they are federally funded, there are larger amounts of money and resources available. Therefore, one grant is more likely to cover all or most of your expenses for your project versus a private grant that usually is smaller amounts of money. And so then you kind of have to collect 1, 2, or 3, or if you get one grant and then you decide to come up with different creative ways of fundraising the difference of the amount that you need. All right, some of the negatives with public grants are that the proposals are usually very lengthy. It's also usually a multi-step process. So that feeling of it taking a lot of time, you might be thinking of the public grants. And the reason it is that way is because there's so much money on the line that they are trying to really make sure that the projects that they're choosing are going to people that are going to execute their vision once they've received their funds. Alrighty, so another negative is that there's usually larger pool of applicants, again, because of the larger amounts of money that are being given out, and then also the strict deadlines and procedures. So normally if you are on a public grant and it says, hey, this grant's due at 11:59 Eastern Standard Time on March 31st, you are not going to get it in the next day. It's not going to happen. That system is going to shut down. Versus a private grant where, I'm not going to lie, I've gotten it in a couple days late. So it kind of, just know that the deadlines are a little bit more strict with public grants. All right, and then the last one you can choose to kind of view as a positive or a negative because it changes based on our political climate. And that is that the party in office might choose to cut these resources. They might choose to cut the amount that the NEA, the National Endowment of the Arts, gets. But on the contrary, the party in office might also choose to give more to that fund. So that's a tipping scale, and it can move either into a positive or a negative. All right, let's talk about private grants. And this means just that funding does not entail public funds, okay? And private grants are in all kinds of sizes. They've got emergency grants, which means that they could range $100 or $200, even $500, smaller amounts. But what's great about the emergency grants is that most of these applications are on a rolling basis. So all of these public grants that I just spoke about usually only happen once a year. So you know that you have to get that deadline in on a specific time. And if you miss that, you got to wait a whole other year to apply. But a lot of private grants kind of have rolling deadlines. Therefore, if you don't get it 1 month, you can wait another month and then reapply again. Maybe it means that you need to be tweaking your proposal a little bit to make sure that, you know, you're getting what you need. So alrighty, a little bit more about private grants. Some good things are that there are definitely less hoops to jump through. So the proposals are definitely not as long. And it's usually not a multi-step process. Again, it's not for all of them, but the smaller ones definitely is not a multi-step process. There's usually also fewer applicants just because there are so many private grants. They're everywhere, and they're tiny ones and there's big ones. And so a lot of the times people just don't even know that these private grants are out there. So that usually leads to fewer applicants, which means then that you have a greater chance of being awarded the grant. Some of the cons mean that there's less money available due to limited resources. Troubleshooting or project support might be more difficult because of the smaller team working on reviewing or processing your grant. So it's not uncommon to apply for a private grant and then not get it and also not hear back from them, just because their team is smaller and they don't have that overhead to be able to get to each and every applicant. Alrighty, so where can you find these grants other than Google? Okay, which we know, we've learned today that this is a good tool, but let's get a little bit more specific. I highly recommend that you start local. So I'm going to go through a few resources that are located in Dallas that are Dallas specific. So if you're tuning in and you're not from Dallas, I encourage you to look at your own city's database, similar databases of where I found these, because I bet you that they also have similar resources. And just hang in while I get through this local Dallas grants. Okay, first one, this is where I started, and it's good for beginners and it's good for people that are super advanced in grants, and that is the Dallas Public Library. All right, guys, in the Central Branch, which is the downtown location, there's on the 6th floor, they offer a really, really great database where you can search. You can search all kinds of grants, and it's a database that's usually private that you have to pay for. Therefore, you have to be in the actual library on the 6th floor, hooked into their Wi-Fi to have access to this grant database. So it is a little bit of a time commitment, but I actually love going there because the staff is really resourceful and super friendly, and they can tell you all about other grants, information, services, books, resources. And it's just nice. You can go there, grab a cup of coffee, and just sit for a few hours and search this database because you can get really, really, really specific criteria. Alrighty, the other really great resource is the City of Dallas Office of Arts and Culture. This was also previously known as the Dallas Office of Cultural Affairs, and they recently changed their branding and their name. So just know that now they're going by the City of Dallas Office of Arts and Culture, and they have 3 grants that usually don't happen simultaneously, but you've got one grant cycle, that grant cycle closes, and then the next one opens. And there's 3 of them that they fund, and their newest one is called Arts Activate. And to me, this is one of the most exciting ones because it's a project-based grant for nonprofit arts and cultural organizations. However, it's also open to individual artists and artist collectives. So I remember as an individual artist before Das Blumenlein Project was a nonprofit organization, we were just applying to things as individual artists. And I didn't realize that I needed my search criteria when applying for grants to say grants for individual artists. So make sure that if you're not an artist collective and you're not an established organization, and by established, I just mean that you filed the paperwork, then just make sure that you're making triple check that your search criteria says individual artists, so you're not wasting time sifting through a bunch of other grant applications and getting discouraged because you just see organizations on there. Alrighty, the next one, however, is for organizations, so Cultural Organizations Program, and that's a really great grant for established organizations in the Dallas County. And then the last one is Community Artist Program. And this is more of an opportunity than a grant. So Community Artist Program, the City of Dallas allocates annual funding for culturally based and ethnic specific artists to provide no-cost services to residents of Dallas. So you can technically apply to be considered for a community artist spot for the City of Dallas, and they put you in communication with and kind of set up gigs, if you will, but you don't have to be a musician. And they get you set up and they pay you to do your art for the residents of Dallas. So that's a pretty great opportunity. The other one that's local is the Dallas Museum of Art. I checked it out the other day and they had about 3 grants for artists. Unfortunately, all of those application periods have closed currently. However, they will be reopening. So just bookmark that tab maybe for later. Another group in Dallas that does really great work is called Art Conspiracy. They also you might know them as ArtCon, and they do really, really great work. I put in the slide on Livestorm, they call what they do street level philanthropy, which I love. It's a very grassroots approach, and they offer kind of these large events where you can apply to be an artist. And by the way, that application is always on their website. It's ongoing, so you can go and you can apply there right now, and it does not take a lot of time. And if you're chosen, then you can go and you can sell your work in these large events that are kind of auction based and they move really quickly. And then they also have a yearly grant, a beneficiary grant. So they do a lot of great work for local Dallas artists. And last but certainly not least, because this is a huge resource, it's Texas Commission on the Arts. Check out their website. It is not a beautiful website, but it is a very resourceful website. And they have everything from artist residencies, which we'll chat a little bit about after these grants, to different grants all over the state of Texas, and it's just an awesome resource. I constantly check their website whenever I'm looking for a new one. Alrighty, what else are we working with here? National and international resources. All right, Creative Capital. Do yourself a favor today, and if you're interested in signing up for grants or if you're interested in an artist residency, go and sign up for their monthly newsletter. This organization is just awesome. I have found almost all of my opportunities, all of the ones that have been successful, and by successful, I mean the ones that I have gotten funds for, have been through Creative Capital. So they do not spam your inbox, and everything that they send is so relevant and so clear and concise and easy to read. They do a lot of the heavy lifting for you. So if you sign up for their monthly newsletter, you'll get 1 email a month where they have given you all of the upcoming grant and artist residency deadlines. And this is national and international. And they've done all the work. They give you the deadline. So if you start for March, they'll be giving you April and May's upcoming deadlines. And They do all the work. So they give you the summary of what the grant is, what they're looking for, what the amount is, the website. I mean, it's an amazing resource, so I highly recommend it. The next one is the National Endowment for the Arts. Again, this is a public grant resource, and they have a really great online tool. I haven't used it that much, but I plan to as our organization continues to grow. So I recommend you guys also check it out. It's called the NEA Online Grant Search, and it's a really great tool, pretty easy to find on their website. Alrighty, and the other one I use is Grant Station. This one's good because you can really, actually, you can also do this on the NEA. You can get really specific on what you're looking for in your grant. So they're really great specific search tools. Okay, I want to talk a little bit about artist residencies and other artistic opportunities that maybe aren't grants, but that are still, I think, crucial and so beneficial to creatives. So artist residencies are similar to grant applications, not to a public one, but to a private grant application, which means that the proposal is not super lengthy, but you do have to have a lot. You've got to have your portfolio ready, which this is a quick plug. On Friday, Mo Sajapur is going to be doing a webinar on creating a portfolio. So if you don't have one, tune in, because you definitely need one for grants and for artist residencies. And these allow artists the much needed time and space and mental space to create and to do what we do best, right? To get creative. And so, sorry, can you save this live? Yes, we're going to be posting it on the TX Studios YouTube, so you can check back and look there. Okay, so artist residencies, again, creative capital, that's probably where I find all of mine that have been pretty successful, but doing a quick Google search, you know, was also helpful. So artist residencies and other opportunities. So this is kind of one of those other opportunities. This is a project that I will maybe be doing in May if the shelter in place is lifted. We'll see. But Try Me was a grant proposal that my organization wrote, and it was through AT&T Performing Arts Center. The actual grant was called the Elevator Project, and it's funded through the City of Dallas Office of Arts and Culture, which we talked about a little earlier today, as well as the Texas Commission on the Arts. And why this, I like to call it more an opportunity than a grant, is because even though they do give you a small stipend, it's not really about the funds. So this specific opportunity allows us to go in and use and do a 3-night run at AT&T Performing Arts Center. We get use of their mailing list and their marketing team and their development team. And so it's more of a mentorship. Even though we do get a little bit of funds from them, but we are mainly responsible for the financial burden of the production, as well as getting people in the seat. So know that artist opportunities can look very different, and you can get creative and make them work for your needs and your project and what you've dreamed up. Alrighty, so here are kind of some next steps and tips. So number one, dream up your project, because everything that is a grant is going to be project-based, all right? Especially if you're an individual artist. As organizations, you can choose to do operational grants, which means it's kind of like funding for the whole organization. But for individual artists, almost all of the ones that I have applied for and I've seen are project-based. So this is the fun part, guys. Dream up your project. What do you want to create? Who do you want to create with you? And actually my partner, my business partner, Bethany, when I was running this webinar with her yesterday, walking her through it, she said, don't forget to remind people that writing grants with a creative partner is so much better. And that's true. I don't know what I would do without my creative partner. It really, 2 minds are always better than 1, 3 minds are always better than 1. And so if you can have somebody dream up your project with you and kind of do a joint grant application with them, I highly recommend it. It's fun. Okay, the next one is begin to research for grants and opportunities that can help you realize your vision. So why I put that second is because you really need to dream up your project before you start looking for grant opportunities. You'll get way too overwhelmed trying to just go straight for the grants. It's a lot. You can get a lot more specific once you know the project that you want to create. And also that goes into number 3, which is thoroughly read through guidelines and requirements. Once you've dreamed up your project, you know the handful of grants that you want to apply for. Now it's time to read through the guidelines and requirements. Does this fit for me? Is this the right one for me? Can I make it work for me? Can I get creative and maybe change my perspective a little bit to make it work for me? And we'll talk about kind of reading between the lines in a couple minutes. But it's really important to make sure that you are thoroughly reading through guidelines and requirements. The other one is to research past grant recipients. So this is something that I've used to my advantage before. And this is not to compare yourself by any means to other artists or to other people. I don't believe in that, but it does kind of let you see where in your career these people are. And it's not to discourage you, but maybe if you got your camera, a couple of weeks ago or a couple months ago, applying for an NEA grant is maybe a little advanced for this current moment. But it doesn't mean that you can't apply for an emergency grant privately to take a photography course. So think about it, change your perspective, and see what you can work with. Alrighty, so researching past grant recipients. Yeah, that's super helpful. All right, so think outside of the box if the description or requirements are vague. So I'm going to give you guys a specific example of this. At this time last year, I was doing an artist residency in Colorado, and I looked at past grant recipients and realized that they were all visual artists. And not only were they all visual artists, but in like the 5 to 10 years that they were in existence, I can't remember how many years they've been in existence, this organization, but they'd never hired a performing artist, and they definitely hadn't hired a performing artist duo. However, I read through the lines a little bit, I read between the lines a little bit, and the requirements and the descriptions were a tiny bit vague. And what they kept honing in on was they wanted artists that believed in creating art that was collaborative and community-based. And I knew that that's something that we did really, really well. And so I made a case for us saying that I thought that we deserved to be there because we aligned with their mission. So when I'm saying read through guidelines and requirements, yes, read through the fine print, but also scour their website to find out what is at the heart of this organization. Who are these people? What do they want? What are they looking for? Do I fit within that vision? Because if you don't, maybe it's not worth it to apply. Maybe it's not worth your time. You want to find people that align with what you believe in, that are going to back you up. Alrighty. Okay, this speaks to the A type of my personality, type A personality. Okay, create a Google Doc or spreadsheet. So when I first started the grant process, I didn't know what I was doing, and I was just bookmarking everything. And so now if you open my laptop and go to my Safari browser, you will see hundreds of grant applications, and they are not organized, and it gives me a lot of anxiety. So don't do what I did and just start a Google Doc or a spreadsheet right off the bat. And I encourage you to make 3 columns. So the first column is to make an immediate column with due dates. So these are grants that you found that you're like, you know what, these are right for me. We've got deadlines coming up in the next, I usually do 4 to 8 weeks, so 1 to 2 month range. And then add a little note. Maybe you read that they need some assets that you haven't created before. So make a note saying, need to create these assets, right? Because if you have a long running list of grants and you don't have notes next to them, they will all blur together and you're gonna get overwhelmed. So don't let that happen, and plan ahead, and instead make sure to organize them a little bit while you're researching and not later on. So the second column should be a save for later column. This is usually my largest column. Sometimes it means that the deadline might have just passed. Like I found the grant, but the deadline has passed, and so now I can't apply until 2021. Put in the save for later column. Maybe put an asterisk, maybe bold if you're really, really passionate about that grant. The next one is finally, when you start writing them, create a column of completed grants, and make sure you put dates on these as well so you can kind of track them. And then lastly, create a grants folder on your computer that has all previous applications uploaded along with the assets you created and attached to your application. And this is because, like I said right at the beginning of this webinar, everything that you work to build this application is going to strengthen your project. All of the resources, all the things you've written, you don't want to forget that you've written them. And so make a grant folder so that you don't have to scour your email for that random receipt of a PDF that you got somewhere. And instead, make sure that you have folders. So I have a grant folder on my laptop, and when I go in, there's a bunch of other folders for all the other grants I put in. When you go in, you see the portfolio that I listed for that grant, what the project was, etc. Because you will go back and you will probably reuse some of that. You won't copy and paste, but you'll get re-inspired by some of the ideas. You'll forget about some of those projects you dreamed up, and so it's really helpful. Alrighty, and this is a little one, but it's worth mentioning. It's really important, public or private grants, to follow directions. Don't give the person reviewing your application a reason to get frustrated or annoyed with you. So this is somebody who reviews applications as well. If it says put your CV in this file format, i.e. a PDF, don't put it in a Word doc. Don't do that. Take the extra 30 seconds to export that document into a PDF and upload that. This goes, it's really portfolio things. So I just actually finished filling out a grant 2 days ago, and I realized right before I was going to submit, fine little print that said your photos and your media needs to be labeled in this very, very specific way. And so it was like 1_ last name _ project name _ date _ medium _ And so I had to go back to all 15 uploads and like retype all of those in and put them in. And it's a small thing, but they wouldn't put it in there if it wasn't important to them. So I highly recommend that you follow those directions. And that's the end of a quick introduction to our grants webinar. Before I answer questions, I just wanted to say thank you for tuning in this morning. It means a lot that you are spending time with the TX Studio, even if it is virtually. We hope to see you guys in our space sooner than later. And also, this is just a quick reminder to make sure you tune in on Wednesday at 10 a.m. because Corey is going to be showing us all how he is doing this crazy FaceTime photo shoot that just looks amazing and is blowing up Twitter. So please tune in on Wednesday. And then on Friday, I already mentioned this, but I'm going to say it again. Mo Sajapur is going to be hosting a webinar on creating a portfolio. So that's going to be another exciting one Friday at 10 a.m. All right, guys, feel free to send me some questions. I'm going to be on for a few more minutes. And yeah, it was a pleasure hanging out with y'all this morning. Temi, would you be able to provide a template or picture of how you organized it so that Apertina and I can make sure we do it right? A template of what? What do you mean exactly? Due dates. Got it. Yes, I can do that. I will send that over. I know it probably depends on the type of grant, but how much do you generally give yourself to write a grant? Oh, how much time do you generally give yourself to write a grant? The quickest one I've done has probably been a 2-week turnaround. But each one is so individual, honestly. So sometimes I would have watched it, or it would have been in my like coming up grants column, and I would see, okay, it's time, or like maybe I finally dreamt up the project. Okay, it's time to start collecting these funds, and so it all depends on how quickly I find the grant. But the one I just wrote was 2 weeks. Other grants, maybe a month. I've never taken longer than a month. But again, I haven't dive deep into the public grant sector yet. I did one right when I started doing grant writing, but then DBP took a little bit of a sidebar. Now that we're really strengthening and growing our organization, I'm going to be looking at those more, and I have a feeling those will probably take me about 2 to 3 months. So I hope that's helpful. From IG, do you have grant writing resources? Ooh, that's a good one. No, that's the short answer. I did go when I went to the library. I like checked out the books. I was like, I'm gonna do the things, and I just didn't find it helpful. I don't learn that way. If you learn that way, knock yourself out. There are so many books on grant writing. Spend the time, hop onto your library, and I'm sure somebody there can help you, but it's just not the way I learn it. It's not the way I write. It's not the way my brain works. So I found it was actually getting in the way to use these grant writing resources. And instead, I just focused on the project. Usually I skip around on the grant application. I don't go, 1, 2, 3, 4. I dive into what I'm passionate about that day. So if it's like, tell us about your concept, I dive deep into what my project's going to look like. And then I do, or maybe I'm like, I'm not ready to do that yet. I'm going to start on the portfolio section. So there are a ton of books out there for grant writing, but I don't use them. And also, though, that is why I say people should double check your work before submitting. Make sure that you can grab some feedback from some friends or people that kind of act as advisors for you to read through your grant proposal before you send it in. Alrighty, Temi, when you apply to a grant, do you need to include how much the project might cost? Do they want to know how you spent the money? 100%. You are going to need to come up with a budget for almost every grant, even if that grant is not even if you don't end up allocating it for that, because things change and everybody knows that, but you definitely need to have a general, and not even a general, a pretty specific idea of what you want to use it for. So in this, I just did an emergency grant for a couple days ago, and I put like very specific things. I was like, we're going to use this to pay for the gels for the lighting on this, production. I'm going to use it to pay for the projections, etc. And then I even put in parentheses the amount of money that those people or that supply costs me, so that they know that I've done the research. So again, the more specific, the more clear you can be on what you need, the more helpful it is. Yes, thank you. Grant, is there a common element that strings together the grants that you have won? When I look back at old grant applications that I did not get, that I didn't win, which I hate reading them. I'm like, oh, what was I thinking? But everybody's gonna start somewhere. I realized that I wasn't being clear. I wasn't being as clear as I could be. My writing was too emotional, and it wasn't specific enough. And so I would say that specifics and clarity of everything, from clarity of the project and the vision to the budget. Also, my writing just got better. The advisors got better. It started like with just a friend reading it, and now old professors, previous professors of mine, I trust to read it through. So I think that's the common elements for me, at least. I need an emergency grant for this pandemic. Yeah, so actually I meant to start the webinar this way, but I just totally forgot and dived in. So I went back and forth a little bit. Should I be providing COVID-19 resources, grant resources for artists? But I ended up deciding that I'd rather do more evergreen content for you guys, something that you can use outside of this pandemic. However, a lot of the resources that I listed earlier do have COVID-19 resources for artists and grants listed for artists. So know that if you go to Creative Capital, if you go to the NEA, if you go to any of those things that I listed, there's a huge banner on all of those websites that say COVID-19 resources for artists, and you can click that. So there are some grants out there for that. And on a sidebar, this isn't grants, but I was reading through the new Corona relief bill that passed, and normally gig economy workers, self-employed, essentially people that file 1099s are not eligible to apply for unemployment, but under the Corona relief bill, we are allowed to apply for unemployment. So I know that I've lost a lot of gigs. My husband has lost a lot of gigs. I know a lot of photographers that have, lost shoots and stuff. And while I don't know any details or specifics, I don't know if those have been released yet, but maybe just keeping an eye on that, and hopefully that can help us recoup some of our losses. So anyways, I ended on a little bit of a downer note, but hopefully not. Thank you guys again so much for tuning in. You guys were awesome. This video is going to be uploaded onto YouTube. So just know that if you had any questions or if I went too quickly, you can always use that as a resource. All right. Thanks, guys. Have a great one.